Tonight on the 31 Nights of Halloween Horror, be careful who you marry, because she could turn out to be a psychopathic bitch that will try to frame you for murder and get you executed. Tonight's movie, a Chinese torture chamber story.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the 31 Nights of Halloween Horror! Yes, all hope is lost. Yes, all hope is lost. And tonight, we continue on our journey towards the end of this really unique, strange, I guess, I don't even know how to describe it. Marathon of pain and sorrow and suffering. Yes. Anyways, and speaking of pain and sorrow and suffering, I thought tonight we should review a film that is notorious for its Cat 3 goodness. A movie that some people might question its horror creds, even though it definitely shows off the horror of corruption and ancient judicial systems. Maybe, I guess, ancient, whatever, old-time judicial systems and things like that. And that movie is a Chinese torture chamber story. Yes, a Chinese torture chamber story. So what is it about? Well, it is about a man who is married to an insatiable sex kitten. She wants it all, and all it is that she wants. And he's probably not enough to satisfy her. Anyways, this man also kind of gotten a little shine on to this maid of theirs, and he plans on making her his concubine, which doesn't sit well for the wife. And though the wife really, I don't know if she should complain, because, she is having an affair with another man. A man who just happens to be the son of a judge. So she hatches a scheme along with the man to frame her husband and the maid for the death of another man. Now, I'm not going to get into all the particulars, because I think anyone who wants to watch this, you should really see it for yourself, because I think the plot is actually kind of interesting. So, of course, they have to bring in the husband and the maid and the corrupt judge who knows... The corrupt judge who is trying to, of course, keep his kid from going to jail, devises a bunch of tortures to get the two to confess, and then, of course, be executed for adultery and murder. So, will our two star-crossed lovers be able to defeat the corrupt Chinese court system? Or will they have to face the inevitable torturous death? Well, you'll have to find out by watching. So let's get to the scores, shall we? Violence and gore. I'm going to give this a 3.5 out of 5. So look, the phrase torture porn has been thrown around for a while. And so I can understand where people get this sort of notion, even though the thing that kind of made it most famous was the original Saw movie, which honestly wasn't that torturous. Anyways, but this movie is definitely skirting the lines of both genres, porn and torture, and bringing them together in such a way. However, I do have to say that this movie definitely pulls its punches. It is very bloody. It is violent. There is some gruesome things happening. However, It cuts away. It doesn't show you, it doesn't have like horribly nasty gore effects, but it still is pretty dang violent and pretty darn bloody. So 3.5 out of 5. Plus there's a decapitation, except not in the way normally we have decapitations, if you know what I mean. Anyways, 3.5 out of 5. Moving on to shock value. Shock value is going to be a 4 out of 5, and it's not just the torture that is shocking, but there are certain scenes in this movie which are just like, oh my God. And the thing is, one could make the case that this is kind of a comedy movie, which also adds to the shock factor, because there are things that happen. Oh, there's this scene where this guy get this invisible talisman, and he's trying to do improper things with a lady, and let's just say he and another guy ended up being victims of something else. Yeah. So, man, this is the worst time to have my nose start itching. But anyways, we're going to continue on, because there's, of course, the torture methods are really, really brutal, but there's also like a scene with the wife, and it's like, oh, I want to play with the toys, and there's these toys, and they are just like these contraptions. Like one is called Mr. Cock. Anyways, but there's like this sort of like thing that goes on that has these little brushes that when you move and stuff, the brushes are on these little spring. Anyways, let's just say things and stuff, and yeah, it's shocking. 4 out of 5. Moving on to plot, I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5. The story is actually presented in a very interesting way. It is presented kind of like a court case, where the main story is revealed through the eyewitness testimony of the people involved. And so you kind of, jump from, the story to the current court case, back and forth. And I think it does that in a very entertaining way. Also, it does do a decent job of weaving the comedy, the horror, and the sex all together, so that it's not too overly heavy-handed one way or the other. In fact, I find it kind of interesting that they wove comedy into this. It has kind of a feel for like a movie like Sex and Zen or Erotic Ghost Story, but of course with the violence and the torture in there. But it is not so heavy-handed with with the violence and the torture, that it starts to get to the point where you're like, am I going to have to like get some therapy, because this is getting on the borderline of troublesome things to be liking. But anyways, of course, it is still pretty heavy-handed on the sex aspects. It is definitely leaning more towards the sex portion than the torture portion. However, it's nothing more graphic than you would have found on late night on Cinemax in the late 90s, early 2000s. Softcore, definitely. But it is an interesting mesh, and I think it's kind of ambitious to try to like have those all tie in together and not be a complete mess. And it is not a complete mess. It's actually enjoyable and entertaining. And so I give it a 3 out of 5. Moving on to acting, I am giving that a 2.5 out of 5. Look, some of the stuff is way overblown. There's comedy in this, so there is the hyperbole that you get in the comedy. But I think overall the actors do a decent job. In fact, I do recognize the scholar, and I think he played the main character in Sex and Zen, so I guess he's not he's familiar with this type of movie. Anyways, I think they all do a decent job. There's some overacting here, but there's also some decent emoting. So I'm just going to give it an average. Like, it's my cop-out, whatever. I don't care. It's 2.5 out of 5. And plus, it's foreign. Sometimes it's hard to, like, judge because language differences and intonation differences and stuff like that. So cultural differences too. So 2.5 out of 5. Moving on to Nudity, and that is a 5 out of 5. They definitely did not skimp on that. You get a lot of bosoms, a lot of butts, a few bush. You even get like a little bit of penis for the ladies too, So it's all over the place, and there's quite a lot of it. And it never feels excessive, and I do appreciate that. So you're not like worried that you're just watching, straight erotic. It is straight. Well, I guess there are some unfortunate things that may not be considered straight. But anyways, I digress. I said there's comedy in this movie. So 5 out of 5. That moves on to enjoyment factor. I am going to give this a 4 out of 5. The movie is entertaining. There are parts of this movie that made me laugh out loud. There's some craziness. There's some insanity, which if you know me, you know I love my craziness and my insanity. And they're just the what the fuck moments that happen in this movie are great. And there's several of them. And it's not dull. It doesn't drag. Sure, there can be like something to be said that like this movie is trying to be both Sex and Zen and I don't know, like what's kind of like a torturous movie. Like, it's trying to be Sex and Zen, and while also trying to be Men Behind the Sun. But it never gets to Men Behind the Sun levels of graphic violence and disgusting inhumanity and depravity. It's still filled with inhumanity and depravity and disgusting stuff, but just it doesn't get to that level. But it's definitely not as overly horny as Sex and Zen. So it's skirting that line kind of between the two. And I can understand that there'll be some people who are disappointed one way or the other. They'll be disappointed because it's not a complete sleaze fest. And then there will be people who are disappointed that it is not a complete, utter splatter, hard to watch, violent monstrosity. So it definitely kind of tries to get in the middle, though I say it leans a little bit more to the sex than it does to the torture. So that for me, as long as it's not too mixed with the violence and the sex and the violence, there's at least enough healthy separation between the two to feel like it's not like a troublesome situation. So anyways, I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. Would definitely watch again. 4 out of 5. And actually, I recommend it to people who love Cat 3 Hong Kong movies, especially if you are a fan of craziness and don't mind a little sex in your violence or a little violence in your sex. Anyways, 4 out of 5. My overall impression is a 3 out of 5. Like I said, it tries to mesh a lot of things. It's funny and serious. So the tone is definitely not even. and some people might not like that the wild shifts in tone. However, I do appreciate that one of the jokes is played on the audience, and and I'm like, oh man, you guys. I mean, I appreciate it, but you guys, okay, I get it, you know. But so I do appreciate that. I think it's actually for what it is really well done. And there is this this sword fight scene in the woods that is very Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, that turns different after the initial sword fighting. But anyways, it's very reminiscent of what was it? Is that Inju Gakuen La Blue Girl? Like I think is that what it is? Anyways, there's this thing, this Japanese anime, if I may say, called La Blue Girl. Don't look it up. Anyways, that scene is very reminiscent of the themes in in that. Anyways. Forget I said anything. Anyways, no one's watching by now anyway, so who cares? No one's going to care. Like, leave a comment in the comment section below if you've made it this far so that I can be very embarrassed by my lack of morals. Anyways, 3 out of 5. And that averages out to a very impressive 3.6 out of 5. I mean, this is what happens when you have a solid, entertaining movie that also kind of feasts on the bonus points. So 3.6 out of 5. So there you have it, a Chinese torture chamber story. They actually made 2 of these, and this is a 2-piece set from my friends at Vinegar Syndrome. So if you're interested in picking this one up, you can go to their website and pick it up, buy it. So perhaps maybe this is a little preview of the final episode of the 31 Nights of Halloween Horror, All Hope is Lost, by reviewing the second one, perhaps. I don't know. We'll find out. Anyways, that is it for a Chinese torture chamber story. Tell me what you think in the comment section below. Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Will my nose ever stop itching? I don't know, but until then, everybody, I hope you are all being well and that you're safe and you are doing good. And I will see you next time on the 31 Nights of Halloween Horror. And until next time, internet, stay scary. And remember, folks, remember, if you have a talisman that makes you invisible, and you decide that you're going to use that invisibility to do very, very not nice and legal things, especially to a vulnerable woman, let me just say, first, you're an asshole. Second, don't be surprised if you end up getting things in the wrong place. You know, consent is very important, people. Consent is very important. And I'm pretty sure that that person did not consent in that. Let me just say, I'm just saying. Also, man, like, oh, that poor rat just getting absolutely doused. Anyways, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Blah!